Hey YouTube, today we're going to do a valve cover gasket on a 97 Jaguar XJ6. This should apply to 95 to 97 X300 Jaguars with the 4-liter straight 6. So let's talk about the parts you're going to need. This is the most important thing to do first, by the way. You know, these Jags, the parts are getting a little bit trickier to find now, so make sure you've got these. Ant, you're in my shot. Anyways, make sure you can get your hands on these early. I made the mistake of taking it apart and then ordering parts, and it took forever. So anyways, let's get right to it. We've got our valve cover gasket right here, which did not include the rest of this, by the way. So there's the part number. Then we have the spark plug seal. We need 6 of these. You're gonna need, well, you don't necessarily need these. These are the coil pack seals. Now these are just a paper gasket. Some debate about if you even need them, but I got some because my old ones were cracked. There's the part number. And then next, you're gonna want to get 13 bolt seals. The bolts in this valve cover have rubber seals in the top of them, and you are going to need 13 of them. You hear me? Not 11. There are 2 that are hidden. So keep that in mind. There's the part number. I also think I should mention a few things that you're going to need that you might not have sitting around. Make sure you have some lint-free shop rags, some parts cleaner, a T30 Torx, and a T40 Torx. Alright, I confess, this actually has already been apart. I just mocked it up back together so you could see what you have to do in order. Now it's a pretty simple job. There's just a few oddities to it. First, you're going to want to remove your top cover. That's where you're going to need your T30. So we'll take that out. This also has a gasket. I did not replace that gasket because I didn't think it was critical. Then you're going to remove all your electrical connectors from your coil packs. Then you're going to remove your 10mm bolts from your coil packs. Then pop them out. This one actually has the original Lucas coils in it. Wow. You're going to set this aside. Remove your PCV valve. There's a hose clamp on there. Sorry, that's not the valve, that's the hose. Take your oil cap off. Then remove your 13 cover bolts. They look like this. You're going to need your T40, and if you're smart, you'll remove them from out and in. So once you have all those bolts removed, very carefully pry the cover up. So let's take this guy off. Let's go over here and take a look at it. This one thankfully is in very good shape, because supposedly they're pretty hard to get your hands on these days. Let's look at the bottom of it. I put it on my shoes so I don't scratch it up. I've cleaned it up in here some. This is where your, this is where your spark plug seals go in. And this is your PCV oil separator. There's probably a oil mesh under here. Let's see if we can see it. Yep, there it is. That mesh helps pull some of the oil out of the air as it sucks it back into the intake for positive crankcase ventilation. So anyways, once you have this all nice and cleaned up, we're gonna put our gasket in here and we're gonna get it reinstalled. I'm gonna go get a Q-tip with some brake clean and push that through here and clean these channels out. I'd also make sure these are nice and cleaned up, and I'm going to use the rags with a little brake clean to clean up the edges of the cylinder at the top, so we get a nice good seal. And then I will be installing this dry. Alright, let's get ready. Oh, little intermission here. If you're curious about what the valve train looks like under the valve cover, I'll give you a little walkthrough. If not, you can just skip through. Sometimes it's hard to find good pictures online, so here you go. All right, we've got all the grooves cleaned out. As you can see, there's all the dirt that came off them. Just want to make 2 notes. Do not use this to clean your hands, please. Brake clean, carb clean, parts cleaner. It is not for your hands. Another thing it is not for is this. I would not spray it on paint. So if you want to clean this, I would grab some just soap and water, like dish soap, and just be gentle on it. Don't brush it too much. Use like a soft sponge. All right, gotta keep this in good shape. I had a tiny bit of an issue getting the gasket to stay in the cover, which you can see down there. It seemed like the gasket was almost a little bit too large, but I've got to get this thing installed. So what I did is, well, and I can tell you the problem with that is even if you get the gasket in, if you flip it over to install it, the gasket's just gonna fall out. So I took a tiny bit of super high tack gasket sealant, and I used the high tack because of its, well, tackiness, and I put just the slimmest amount, just in dabs between the rubber gasket and the valve cover itself, just to hold the gasket in place. I will not put any on the rubber side that faces the head. I'm gonna leave that dry because I believe it should be. But you can see here just a little tiny bit of it coming out. That yellow there. And the reason I have this board here is because the board is gonna go help that super high tack stick and keep that gasket in place, so when I flip it over to install it, we're not gonna have an issue. All right, so I've got everything cleaned up. The gasket held in there nicely with a little bit of super tack. I know I showed you that part number for the valve cover gasket. I would try to find a higher quality one if I didn't say that already, because that was annoying. So hopefully this guy doesn't leak, but if it does, I'll let you know. So anyways, I also cleaned up this surface here. You can see wherever the gasket meets, it's pretty shined up. So now we're gonna fit this guy in here. We're gonna torque it by hand first, and then we're gonna use a torque wrench. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the torques and all that once we get to it. But first, let's see if we can slap this in here. The gasket shouldn't fall out. Let's see. We have to move our, thankfully it's magnesium, so it's very light. You do it with one hand. Now I'm gonna go on the other side, and first I'm gonna plug this in so it stops pushing on it. There we go. Oh, nice camera work, Matt. I'm just gonna... Oh dear. All right, you can pause it. We got that bolt out from back there, just needed a magnet. What we're gonna do now, actually what I have already done is put all the bolts in with their new bolt seals, and I tighten them all by hand first. So Matt, show them this torque sequence real quick. That is the sequence you need to torque them in. I would even torque them in that sequence when you tighten them by hand. So now I'm gonna tighten them with a torque wrench. And the specification is 5 foot-pounds, 6.5 Newton meters, or 60 inch-pounds. Actually, pound-inches. I'm gonna torque like one of these on camera, and then we're gonna move on and do them off camera because it's gonna take a little bit of time with the dial. Center first. Ideally, you won't be holding the shank, so I'm gonna do this again. What do you think, Matt? It's hard to see at this angle. Okay. So that's what we're gonna torque them to, and then we'll come back on camera. Okay, so we got the valve cover all buttoned up, all torqued down. It looks pretty good. The seals on the bolts squidged out a little bit more than I would have liked, but that's what the torque is. in this TSB we got, so we're gonna stick with it. I'm now going to install my new coil packs that are not cracked. I also have new gaskets for them, as you saw earlier. Oh, Matt, I know is bugging you. We're gonna put the oil cap on. Good. And before I forget, I'm gonna tighten up the PCV hose. Just enough that it doesn't come off. There we go. Bring our harness over. All right, get a beauty shot. Awesome. We're gonna throw on our cover now. All right, I think we're done. Thanks for watching, hope this was helpful.